But in effect, what seems to have been the case was that the white powder of gold, which was highly valuable, highly venerated, was fed to the kings and the pharaohs and the high priests in a particular manner. It was either turned into little cakes and eaten, or it was mixed with water and drunk. And so what Moses was really doing there was not punishing anybody. He was introducing them to something that maybe he knew about and maybe they didn't, or perhaps they even did. But this was a custom, it was a ritual. And it transpires that this material, this white powder of gold, seemed to have quite amazing qualities when ingested. And the qualities were that, and this is the reason why it was given to the senior people, was that it was supposed to heighten certain qualities of leadership. It would heighten awareness. It would heighten perception. It would heighten powers of judgment, that sort of thing. And it was also reckoned to have the power of active longevity, which doesn't necessarily mean that it makes one live longer, but the word active is important because what it seems to mean is that even though one might die at the age one was anticipating to die, you probably wouldn't have contracted any terrible disease. You might have just died from old age because that's as old as you got. But it seemed to have a healing quality to it. So it allowed active physical abilities to move on much later in life. And in fact, when one considers the Bible stories, we've got some extraordinarily great ages in there. I'm not really talking about those very early on in the story where people seem to live for hundreds of years.
Right.
But even, in the sort of latter part of it as we move on, the kings do seem to be leading troops into battle when they're in their 70s and 80s. When they're really quite elderly and would generally be considered to be past it. So clearly this had some very positive effect. Anyway, what Petrie did was that they searched this place, and the temple itself, the sort of outside part of the temple, in fact all of it was built on this plateau. It was a sandstone plateau. So there was no floor laid down anywhere. It was just a plateau. The mountain was the floor. Then there was a series of small storerooms. Well, they appeared like storerooms. And when they went into them, and they clearly weren't as important as the bigger halls and shrines, but their floors were covered with heavy flagstones. And they thought, well, this is really quite odd. So they lifted the flagstones, and lo and behold, beneath the flagstones was an amazingly preserved lot of pure, white, unadulterated powder. Petrie reckoned that there were many tons of it, and they tried everything. They sieved it, they winnowed it, they gave it every test that they could, trying to find whatever foreign matter might be in it, whether perhaps it was the result of sacrificial ritual, or whether it was from the burning of plants to get alkalis, or whatever, but there was nothing. Whatever they did, it just went through the sieves, fine mesh sieves, nothing there at all, just white powder. And gradually the picture came together. The mufcuts, the cakes, the bread, the gold, the powder were all one and the same. And this temple, this workshop, seems to have been primarily there for the manufacture of this material.
And where the material that was found there was a lot of it found, over a ton, as I recall.
Oh, many tons, actually, he reckoned. I mean, they didn't weigh it all.
Has this material been tested in modern times?
Well, yeah, I mean, that material, in actual fact, what happened was that we're outside we're on the plateau now. We've got these rooms, but the tops are off. The bits of walls are there, the flagstones are there, but there's no roof on the thing. So only what happened was that they lifted all these flagstones and stood them up against the walls. And really, I mean, they didn't regard this stuff as anything terribly special. In fact, at one point in time, they thought it was just there to sort of level off the flagstones, as one might lay sand underneath paving stones today, except that there was no reason for the stones to be there. So they just bagged up a bunch of it into a box or a paper bag or whatever it was that they had, and that was eventually sent back to the British Museum in London for testing. And then they came down from the mountain eventually and just left everything as it was, and that was in 1904. By the time the next expedition went there, which was in 1935, which was an expedition led by Harvard University, that was the end of the white powder. It had been open for all of that time, so the desert winds and the storms and the rain and everything had got to it, so it was totally obliterated by then. But the story of the material that was sent back was quite interesting because although, again, nobody paid too much interest to it, the test results on it were fairly simple chemical tests, actually. I mean, there was nothing terribly difficult done, but the tests on it showed it to be the same materials as the white powder that had been found in the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid.
And what were those materials?
They were basically silica and various things. Silica, feldspar, mica, iron, aluminium, in essence. That's basically what it tests as. Now, the interesting thing with that is, and I'll just pop this in now for the sake of it, is when one manufactures this material now, starting with gold, real gold, and there are various methods to manufacture it, but one of the methods to manufacture it is by electronic arcing. Now, this is very interesting because we have the Ark of the Covenant, which turns out to be an electronic capacitor.
Oh, my.
Capable of really, in fact, the power of it generated, its storage capability would have been something like 40 to 50,000 volts, so it would have been enormously powerful. But oddly enough, what happens is when you make this material, and in fact it's a monatomic material, you shock the gold, you shock it so that the atoms become totally confused and they fall apart and they become a powder. They can't join together anymore to become metal. They're simply a powder because you've shocked the hell out of them. Now, when you've done that and you subject it to chemical analysis or even spectroscopic analysis, what it tells you is that it's silica, mica, aluminium, iron, sometimes bits of calcium, exactly the same. And that's the weird thing about monatomic substances, it seems, that once they become monatomic, they do not register as metal anymore.
At all?
Not at all. And interestingly, one other little thing I'll just pop in here, which isn't in the book, they have the University of Washington in St. Louis and NASA have been working for the past few years on retrieving from the ionosphere a substance which they are calling stardust. Now, this stardust comes from beyond our solar system. They're finding it at the ratio of about 6 particles to 100,000 particles of all other cosmic dust, so that it's very rare even up there. But this stuff tests as exactly the same. And what they're saying is, they're saying that they feel that this stardust is going to be, because it emanates from what they say is a metal-rich supernova explosion, that they feel that this stardust will eventually be one of the key clues to the sort of root of the life force on this planet.
My word.
So it's quite extraordinary.
I should say, well, I can hardly wait to get back. This is Whitley Strieber. It's Dreamland. We'll be right back.
All right, folks, I gave you a little bit of insight on that. Like I said, there's a lot of information on there as far as the white gold, what they used to do, as far as ingestion. None of this is new, okay? The only thing is we haven't seen it. In one of the broadcasts I put out there, I put out that for every advancement that we do as far as a year, the government itself advances 44 years, and possibly more, okay? We're talking about elements, and if you want to see the whole thing and the rest of it, I will leave the link into the description at the end. But in the time remaining, I just wanted to give this out there to you that this is not new. Hardly anybody I know, and I went to Marguerite School, went to Alhambra High School, I've gone to Phoenix University, I went to East Los Angeles City College, I went to a lot of schools, and realistically, and even in the military schools, everybody I know, that's why I don't listen to other people. They're lost, because all they're doing is learning just to pass the test. They're memorizing just to pass the test. They're not reading into it, they're not understanding, and they're not seeing with their own eyes what history is. Okay? There was a teacher I had, he used to say the history of the tools and artifacts, but realistically it should be the lessons that you should be learning. I mean, gold has always been looked at as valuable, but has anybody even asked why? There was no money really until the 10th century. So why was gold always produced as value? It's because they had knowledge that's really ancient, and it's nothing new. I mean, if you go back to the ancient text of the Bible, it even says there's nothing new under the sun. It's because you failed to see it. And even today, you can see people always looking, to religions which basically destroy countries. How about looking to the fact that there's more out there than what you actually think? How about actually thinking to yourself and saying, you know what, I don't know anything. It's time for me to learn from ground up, because all that you've been taught is wrong. So you have to throw it aside, and you have to start understanding that there's more out there than you even know. I mean, yeah, we don't know what there is because we haven't really continued the same process. But those hieroglyphics are out there. Those hieroglyphs are out there. Those ancient texts are out there. You don't read them. People always will come up with an answer, oh, this don't exist. Well, did you read them? Do you have them in your house where you can physically get to them? 99% of the time it's no. You don't have the knowledge that goes with it. So the thing of it is, you have to keep your mind open because there's more out there. I mean, gold being a preservation, think about it. Their kings lasted long times. Methuselah, even in the Bible, at 950 years. You show me one person today that lives that long. There isn't any. Because of the way the government has diseases manufactured, because these people are so stupid thinking in a third dimension reality, attacking other people. They're just brain dead. There's no knowledge there whatsoever. But the ancients have the knowledge. I think it's time we get back to basics. And if this is anything, this gold thing is a real big thing, because it's not just the longevity of your body or immortality. We're talking about repairing an organic machine. We're talking about some of them, if those texts, they had a golden figure, a golden glow. They're ingesting gold. What do you expect? Well, anyways, we're running out of time for today, but like I said, I'll leave the link in the description so you can get to the full story. And there's another link in there. You go check it out yourself. But this is information that you really should know. All right? Thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8.